Hello, I'm Chad Souls with the Coffeyville Police Department Communications Center. I have been with the department since August of '97 and have been promoted to the Communications Director's position back in 2012. Officer Sewell has asked me to talk to you reference to our 911 center, so we'll just get started. The Communications Center is staffed with 4 full-time communication officers. They're consisted of 1 midnight, 1 day, 1 evening, and 1 swing officer. We're responsible for the city of Coffeyville for fire, EMS, and police, and the southern half of Montgomery County's 911, along with the northern half of Nowata County. In 2013, our center received just under 58,000 phone calls, and out of the 58,000 phone calls, 19,989 were actual calls for service, and this was for law enforcement, medical, and fire. All 911 calls presently that are cell phone calls are routed to the Independence Police Department, and from there they are then transferred to the proper agencies between the counties. Our communications center basically dispatches for the Coffeyville Police Department, the Coffeyville Fire Department, Coffeyville Regional Medical Center's EMS services. We dispatch for Deering Rural Fire, Liberty Rural Fire, Tyro Rural Fire, and also South Coffeyville Rural Fire Departments. Our agency also monitors the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department, the Nowata County Sheriff, the Kansas Highway Patrol, Independence Police Department, Caney Police Department, Cherryville Fire, EMS, and Police Department, and we also monitor the northern half of Montgomery County's Rural Fire Department. Now the real reason that we're doing it, it's basically we're talking about before the call, which is calling 911 for police, fire, or medical. And hopefully this will give you a better understanding of information. So we'll get started. Before an emergency, know your emergency and non-emergency numbers. For within the city limits of Coffeyville, we request that if you call the police department, call us at 252-6160. If you're calling the fire department, it's 252-6148. Or if you're calling Coffeyville Regional Medical Center for EMS, it's 252-1526. Some simple rules that we're asking that you do is, before your emergency, address numbers are clearly displayed on the front of your home or a mailbox. Reflective material, and that they're visible from the street. And this is more helpful for when it's dark outside, not so much during the daylight, but if you have the reflective lights get to hit it, and it's more visible to be seen. Address is not clearly displayed will basically slow your response down. Also post non-emergency numbers and your address on your refrigerator or near your phone. This will help people that are visiting your house if they don't know what your address is, or small children. Do not program 911 into any speed dial on your cell phone or landlines. And the reason why we say that is because if your cordless phone starts to go dead or the battery's really not that good, it will automatically go ahead and dial 911. Thousands of Invert 911 calls are done when they're programmed. And dispatch has an obligation to listen to the conversation or background information to determine if the call is actually an emergency. So if there's something that's going on that you don't want somebody to actually know about or something and 911 gets called, we do have the duty to have to listen to see what's going on. And in some past, some communication centers have caught actual narcotic activity going on, to also getting ready for a armed robbery at one of the local businesses or banks because somebody inadvertently dialed 911. So know when to utilize 911 versus the non-emergency 7-digit number. So basically we'll give you some examples of 911 for an emergency to calling the 7-digit non-emergency. And basically for 911 we would say that an injury, accident, medical, a fire, a battery that's in progress, a shooting, domestic disturbance, fight, burglary in progress. Basically life-threatening or threatening a property. If it's going on at the present time and it's threatening something, that's when we request that you go ahead and dial 911. To call the 7-digit, or what we call an administrative line, which we have 4 of those with our communication center, are like past thefts, past criminal damages, animal calls, stoplight not working, speaking with our administration, our detective division. Basically anything that is not life-threatening to life or property would be considered calling in on the administrative line, or what we call a non-emergency line. So we'll give you an example. If you arrive home and observe a man you don't recognize running out of your front door with your television set, you need to dial 911 immediately. However, if you want to report that your cousin stole your flat screen TV, but it happened last week and won't return it, that's when we request that you use our non-emergency line, or the 7 digits. Our next thing is basically during an emergency. Be patient. During an emergency, dial 911, stay on the line and don't hang up. The call still will ring through. It doesn't matter if you try hanging up quickly. 911 is a very sensitive piece of equipment, so it will ring through. So remain on the line until the communication or the dispatcher tells you that you can go ahead and hang up. Emergencies don't occur every day, so your adrenaline will be pumping. Take a deep breath and listen carefully. Focus intently on listening. We'll be less likely to become excited and shout. So, if you're excited and you're shouting at us, we're not going to be able to actually hear what you're saying. So we're going to be asking you to calm down just a little bit. So basically do your best to speak at a normal speed and volume. We wear headsets, so if you start shouting or screaming in the headset, it's unpleasant for our hearing. And if you do that, then we're not going to be able to really understand you. Also, be patient, because all questions and answers are placed in our CAD system. So we will be typing as we're going. Answer only questions that are asked, then just wait for our next question. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. There's sometimes that just because you hear silence, we have other things going on. Basically what we're probably doing is we're probably talking to an officer. We're probably talking to one of the fire department or EMS. Our voice is muted while we're on the phone with you. Once we key up the radio, you won't hear us because it will be muted. But if you begin talking, it's going to stop whatever we're having to do to get that first responder to you, because we're going to have to start listening to what you say. That way we're not losing any information to provide. So just remember that could delay help just a little bit. Our next thing is problems faced with our dispatchers, and that's avoiding unnecessary calls. So to avoid some of the common mistakes, never provide a phone to a child to play with as a toy. Because we do have lots of phone calls where it's one of your older cell phones and you give it to the kid so the children can play with it. If you're in a public place, if an emergency occurs, take a moment to survey the scene around you. Because some of the times if you're not familiar with it and you can give us an idea of a certain landmark or something, that helps us out, because with us being familiar with our city, we can actually some of the times know exactly where you're at. Some hesitate to call 911 for assistance, and they call family or friends. There's another delay in service or getting help to you. If it's something that you feel that is an emergency, we request that you go ahead and call 911 for assistance. The next thing is social media myths about 911. Social media myths meaning using other 3-digit numbers that are not in the U.S. Social media suggests that callers can dial centers using a 3-digit number to reach dispatch. These numbers are international numbers used in other countries. Telephone companies in the U.S. try to accommodate them, but basically we highly discourage that you don't use them, because not all the time will some services use it. In the United States, if you have an emergency and you need assistance, we request that you go ahead and just dial 911. Our next thing we're going to talk about is obtaining emergency help from your workplace. And this is know how to dial an outside line if you need it. So obtaining emergency help from your workplace, do you need to dial a particular number? to obtain a line outside. Some places may request you dial a local on-campus number. Example are like large companies in educational institutions. For here in Coffeyville, with our colleges, some of them basically, if you dial 911, will come directly to us. Some companies, probably like John Deere, Southwire, Clean Harbors, some of those, they probably have their own security on hand, and they probably request that you call a certain number that's within their company first. And then if that company can't deal with it, then they will call 911. Some of your larger universities have on-campus police, and they have their own 911 type service. And if they need local law enforcement assistance, then they do get a hold of us either by phone or by radio. And there again, check with your employer or location to determine how they prefer you obtain emergency assistance. The next thing we're going to talk about is accidental misdial of 911 calls. The number one problem that we have with people that call 911 is they make a mistake and they hang up as quick as they can do it. One thing that we request, if you do an accidental 911 hang up, don't hang up. Stay on the line until we get there and explain that there's no problem at our location. This helps determine if we're going to need to send emergency assistance to you or if everything is okay. And depending on policy, for whatever area that you're in, if a law enforcement officer will respond to this 911 hang-up. This could prevent the needless injury of first responders to your location, because if you hang up and we try to attempt to call you back and you don't answer, first responders are more likely to get there to your location because you called 911 for an emergency situation. So you could put them at jeopardy in having an accident if it's not an actual emergency. The next thing is persons with special needs or serious chronic illness, and these are to notify emergency personnel. If you have a loved one with a chronic or special needs or disability, contact your local communications center and see if they have a way to flag an address with instructions in their system. If you contact the police department here in Coffeyville, we do have a way to flag an address and put a descriptive information in there so the dispatcher knows what medical to fire response to police response of any of this stuff. More like the elderly with the chronic or disabilities, if there's a key box that's located somewhere, you know, if it's an accidental push of anything, then we would know where the first responder would need to go and pick that information up. Just remember, never assume that dispatch is looking at or has access to this information at all times too. You know, some of the times our computers go down, or we have a human error, a human failure. We're all human. Computers don't work completely all the time, so you know, not all the time is our information going to be at hand, so you may have to tell us some information. And it does not hurt to offer additional information if there is an emergency. The next thing is we're going to talk about is home security systems, common source of false alarms. Companies offer subscribers panic buttons to simply hit a button. Buttons are placed on keypads that can be accidentally hit. You know, kind of like your key fobs. Key fobs are wonderful things when you're unlocking your doors to your vehicles and stuff, and they can help if say you're just outside your home and you are having an intruder that's inside your house or some type of an emergency and you hit that fob, then it goes to your alarm company. But accidental false alarms could cause a crash or injury to a first responder if it's a false alarm, because here again we're not able to call you and find out if there's any information. Also, children like to push very colorful buttons, so if on a keypad or a key fob they're colorful buttons, they like to push them. So remember to keep those kind of up out of sight and of a children's reach, or explain to your child the proper use of these colors on these type of devices. Silent buttons are important if someone needs assistance and can't speak. And actually picking up a phone and speaking with dispatch is recommended over hitting a panic alarm or a panic button. because here again we can actually get the information that we're needing to get to those first responders. You know, even if it is a burglary in progress, or a domestic disturbance, or if it's a structure fire, or if it's medical that somebody has fallen or in an injury. The more information that we can collect from you is better to get to those first responders. That way they know what type of equipment is needed. Our next thing is medical alert devices. It's not a 911 replacement. There are many different brands and styles of devices that are available. Here at the police department, we don't recommend one over another. That is something that we feel like your family or you basically can kind of look at and see that's more comfortable to your type of situation. These that are monitored by alarm companies ring to a registered nurse or simply dial 911. Majority that come into the Coffeyville Police Department here are basically ones that are for medical. We do have a few fire now. And there again, they monitor, but they don't have all the proper information that we need. You know, if you're getting a medical call coming in, you know, we're trying to get as much information with our emergency medical dispatch so we can provide the ambulance service with that information and get them there safely and quickly without any injury as well. Necklaces or boxed by phone connections or some more that can accidentally be pushed. Citizens who desire to use medical alerts can make sure that 911 can be a backup or reconnect. Again, if you can call 911, it would be better, or if the alarm company can actually connect the two of you guys together. Next, we're going to talk about texting for emergency assistance. Call, don't text is more what we're going to be looking at. Society is a tech-savvy and gadget-filled community anymore, and communications are slow in adding this capability. The state of Kansas is in the process of Next Generation 911, which a majority of what that is coming to is being able to text 911 information to a PSAP or send photos or video to them so they have more information on what's going on. But with that going through and not all the technology there and recommendations, we still request, because not all agencies are able to receive 911 calls via text. So this limits the jurisdictions throughout the country by having the systems in place until this gets done. Plus, older to newer technology is to be replaced. However, budget restrictions is also taking time. Not all agencies can be able to purchase this equipment that is needed as this all goes and transfers through. And as a police department, and also as basically in the emergency services, your best thing is to call 911. That way the dispatcher can get information from you as much as you can. So are you ready to basically be able to call 911? So taking a moment to familiarize yourself with the best practices of the 911 system will allow you to meet these expectations and make you and your loved ones better prepared to face an emergency. In fact, it may just save your life. So in case of an emergency, again, we recommend that you call 911. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. Again, you can call 911 for emergency, and if it's not an emergency, call our administrative line, 252-6160. Again, I'm Chad Souls with the Coffeyville Police Department, and if you have any questions, please let me know.